Hello everyone and welcome to the last section of our first chess lesson. This lesson we're covering piece value and notation. So each piece in chess has a different point value that you should know what the piece values are. So if you're going to trade something, like if you take a piece and they take it back, was it worth it for you or not? So pawns are worth 1 point. You have 8 pawns and they're each worth 1 point. Bishops and knights are both three points. They're called the minor pieces. They have less point values. The rook is worth 5 points and the queen is worth 9 points. And they're called the major pieces because they're worth more than the other ones. The king doesn't have a point value because the whole game is about protecting the king. So you could say the king is worth the whole game. It doesn't have a point value because you can't actually capture the king. So that's the different piece values. And now we're going to talk about notation. So notation is how you write the different chess moves. Like when you want to know where a piece moves, you don't say it moves here because you don't exactly know where that is. Instead, we have a system for writing down what piece moved and where it moved. So you can see here that every square has a letter and a number. So the letter and number are what the square is called, and the letter goes first. So this is A1, this is B1, this is B2, this is A1, B2, C3, this is E2, this is C5, like that. When you want to say where a pawn moves, you just say the square it moves to. Like for example, if the pawn moved here, you just call it D4. So when this pawn moves here, you say D4. That's it. You don't say pawn to D4, you just say D4. Now if a bishop moves, let's say the bishop moved here, like this, you'd say BE4. B stands for bishop, and the square is E4. So say if it moved here, if it moved from here to here, it's BE4. Now the knight, let's say my knight moves from here to here. You say NE7. You might be wondering why we don't use K. We use K for king. And knight sounds like it starts with an N, so we just use N. So if we move here, like this, 1, 2, turn, we say NE7 to symbolize that the knight went here. The rook, when you move the rook, let's say the rook moves here, you'd say RA2. You get it? If you move the queen like here, it would be QC6. King here, KG3. So that's how to say the different moves. Now, when you want to say you capture something like this, if you want to capture the rook, you say RXG2. RXG2. You say the piece you're moving, and an X means capture, and you say the square that it landed on. But for pawns, it's kind of different. For pawns, you have to say, instead of the piece that it moves, because we don't say P takes, we use the file name, the letter D. Here, if you're going to take the pawn this way, you say DXE4. That's how you symbolize pawn captures. This is the same thing with en passant, as we learned last time. Even if the pawn moves here, you say DXE6 and you take the pawn. So that's moves and captures. Now, what if you give a check? Like here, you'd say E3 plus, plus meaning check. So when you want to write that a move was check, you write plus at the end of the move. Like, let's say you capture this piece like this, like that. You say QXE3 plus at the end because it's check. Now, castling also has its own special move notation. For castling, when you castle this way, it's called O-O. O-O is for when you're castling kingside. If you're castling the other way, it's O-O. 3 O's, 2 dashes. That's how you symbolize castling. Now promotion, if you promote it here, let's say you promote it to a queen, you'd say H8 equals Q. You say that the square that the pawn moved to, and you put equals to say that it's promoting, and then you put the letter of the piece that it promoted to. If you promoted to a bishop like this, you'd say G8 equals B. Promotions can also be a check like this. If you promote it here to a queen like that, this is check. So the pawn was here and it moved here. So you say H8 equals Q plus. It might seem a bit confusing at first, but it just takes practice and everyone eventually gets it. So you could even do capturing a piece and giving check. You say, if you're promoting this way, CX D8 equals Q plus. Yeah, you have to write that whole thing out if you want to say you capture with check and you promote. Checkmates are the last thing you need to know when you're talking about notation. Like if a queen moved here to give checkmate, you'd say Q D8. And then instead of writing plus, because plus is check, you write hashtag for checkmate. So it would be Q, because it's a queen, D8 hashtag. So that's how you write checkmate too. Sometimes it can get confusing though if two pieces can move to the same square. Like if you want to move this knight here, how do you make sure you know which knight is moving to F6? Here, they're on different files. You can see like this. They're on different letters. So if you want to move this knight here, you'd say NG F6. If you can get confused between the pieces, you write the file or rank depending on which is different. Then you move there. If it was two rooks like this, and then you want to say you move this rook here, you say R4 E5. You say 4 because they're on the same rank. So they're on the same file, sorry. So if they were on the same file, you can't say the file because they're both on it. You'd say the rank instead because they have different ranks. So here, if you want to move this here, you say R, and then you say 4, R4 to E5. So R4, E5. And then if it's a check, you say plus. If it's a capture, you say are 4x e5. So it's just a pattern that it might be confusing at first, but it gets easier the more you practice. While you're playing games, write down the moves that happen in order. Usually write white's moves on the left and black moves on the right. One pair of moves for each line. So we can start out with like this, for example. If you start out like this, say you put one period to say that it's the first move, and you say e4, and if they go e5, you say e5. So you say one period, e4 space e5. If you had knights like this, you say two period, knight f3 space knight c6. So two period n f3 space n c6. So that's piece value notation. Next lesson, we're going to cover some basic tactics that you can try to beat your opponent with. I'll see you there.